Good morning. Welcome to the MIT Sloan webinar series for incoming MBA students. Thank you for joining this webinar brought to you by the MBA Program Office. We have worked in conjunction with colleagues from offices throughout Sloan to offer these summer webinars to help you prepare for opportunities and introduce you to relevant resources before you arrive at MIT Sloan. Today's topic is the Business Analytics Certificate at MIT Sloan. My name is Katie Bertman, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Presenting today is Corinne Simon, who's a senior lecturer here at MIT Sloan. And also with us today are our MBA program office staff, Dawn Peters and Sheila Canali, who will assist in answering any questions. Before we start, I'll briefly go over the process, then I'll turn it over to Corinne. If you have questions during the presentation, we invite you to use the Q&A functionality to type in your questions throughout the webinar. Once the presentation ends, we'll be happy to answer all of your questions. So let's get started. Corinne, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Katie, for the introduction. Welcome everyone who joined us today to learn more about the Business Analytics Certificate. So first, what's the motivation behind the launch of the certificate? So last year, the Business Analytics Certificate was the last of 3 certificates to be launched at MIT Sloan. We already had the healthcare certificates for those interested in careers in the healthcare industry, and the sustainability certificate for those interested in sustainability. But we also launched last year the Business Analytics Certificate. So I'm probably not telling you anything new if I tell you that there's been an explosion of data in the past 10 plus years. So you probably heard of big data and the 4 V's. Volume of data has increased, has exploded. The velocity of the data that's coming in is now extremely fast. The variety and the types of the data that are now being utilized and collected has also increased. And then finally, the veracity of the data, whether it's true or not, the accuracy, whether it's true or not, has increased as well. So companies like Facebook or Google now produce terabytes of data per day, a quantity that was impossible to ponder a few years back. And now every single day throughout the world, 2.5 quintillion bytes of data are produced. That's 18 zeros. So obviously, all these massive amounts of data means that there's a massive demand of talent to analyze those data and bring insights and action. Because obviously, all this data is wasted if we are not making good use of it in business decisions. So as you can see on this chart, which is in thousands, so it's thousands of jobs, the number of opportunities for analytics talent has massively increased, and there's a huge talent gap as high as 50% of the current supply. So there's a need for analytics talent that goes beyond the current supply by 50%. And then obviously it makes a lot of sense at MIT Sloan to have an analytics program. This is one of the great strengths and differentiators of the school. So a couple of years ago, the school also launched a Master in Business Analytics in conjunction with the Operations Research Center. This is our data science master's program, which has been ranked top in the world. The Operations Research Center itself is a center for research in the field of operations research, which is also ranked top in the world. And then at the undergraduate level, students can also take a major and minor in business analytics. So this definitely makes sense and aligned with the Sloan brand. And then throughout the school, amongst all of the different areas of expertise, we have a wealth of Sloan faculty with a strength and interest in research in the field of analytics. From operations research with, for instance, Professor Ptsimas, in operations management, Professor Parakis, statistics, Professor Barnett, IT and marketing, Professor Aral, in economics, Professor Forbes, in system dynamics, Professor Sturman, or in finance, Professor Lowe. And these are just a sample. And there's also been increasing student demand for analytics programming because obviously students are well aware of the trend and really want to be able to tap into that trend and participate in it. So students have created a data analytics club with increasing membership. So the club brings in speakers and programming such as workshops on campus to students interested in analytics. Analytics Lab, one of our action learning courses, has seen a dramatic growth in its enrollment, and there's a growing interest among students in that lab. So for those of you who are still new to the lab concept at MIT, this is action learning, meaning that in the class you are exposed to projects with real companies in analytics. One of our highlight classes is Analytics Edge, which you can also sample on edX. And that class as well has seen tremendous growth in enrollment. So in that class, we talk about analytics used in a variety of industries and settings, from healthcare to casinos to airlines and others. And now we have as many as 6 sections of the class being taught concurrently in the spring semester. So I want to spend a little bit of time to tell you what we mean by business analytics at MIT. So because the field of analytics is very hot, there's a lot of buzzwords. There's a lot of buzzwords out there. So you've probably seen all of these terms: big data, machine learning, deep learning, artificial intelligence, data science, etc. And they are all somewhat used, interchangeably, even though they mean something sometimes slightly different and sometimes drastically different. So I want to make sure that you guys have a good understanding, a good grasp of what we mean by business analytics at MIT. So really, at MIT Sloan, we view analytics as a framework for approaching real-world business problems. And that framework starts with data and builds models to arrive at decisions that create value. So it's really the blend of 2 different fields. The first one is operations research, which traditionally has built mathematical models in order to inform decisions. And then the field of machine learning, which starts with data and infers models to make predictions. And so when you blend all those 2 together, you see sort of the full pipeline, the full value stream from data all the way to decisions. So it's a unique perspective that we have here at MIT Sloan, where other schools and other academic institutions focus more on one versus the other, but don't necessarily bring these 2 perspectives together. So machine learning is not really concerned with decisions, it's just concerned with making predictions, predicting future outcomes. And then operations research traditionally has not been as focused on data and building models for data. So really you need those 2 perspectives together in order to have a sort of a holistic view. So to make it easier to understand, we can also refer to a widely used framework that sort of differentiates descriptive analytics from predictive and prescriptive analytics. So within that framework, really what we mean by business analytics here at MIT Sloan, and for the purposes of the certificate, is analytics that's not just descriptive, but also predictive and or prescriptive. So descriptive analytics would just be, you look at your data sets and you produce some summary statistics, such as, the mean and standard deviation of some of the variables. You produce dashboards and reports, and you do some data mining. Versus predictive analytics really is machine learning, and prescriptive analytics involves operations research. So now let's get into the details of the certificate itself. So first, the design principles. So one key principles here is flexibility in course choices. We are aware that the certificate draws students from varied backgrounds and interests. Some of you may have had prior exposure or experience in analytics, but some of you may not. Some students may be interested in particular verticals versus others. So we have a broad variety of courses, both in terms of the level from introductory to more advanced, as well as in terms of focus. It's open to graduate students from the whole institute. So you just need to be a currently enrolled graduate student in order to be able to partake in the certificate, which means that the cohort of certificate pursuance is very very varied and broad, and you get exposure and networking with a lot of different types of students. We've made sure that the classes and the curriculum is well timed and sequenced, and you guys are able to complete the curriculum regardless of your program, whether you guys are in a 2-year program, but we have other students in 1-year program or 18-month program, and we've made sure that this any student can complete the certificate. We already have at Sloan a very strong offering of classes in analytics, so we are able to leverage all of these different classes within the curriculum, but we are also open to classes outside of Sloan, whether they are in the Media Lab, in Core 6, in electrical engineering and computer science, or even outside of the institute if you're cross-registering with Harvard, for instance. As is a hallmark at MIT Sloan, action learning is a strong component of your degree, and it's also a strong component of our certificates. So the analytics certificate is no exception, with a compulsory action learning component involving real-world projects with real companies. And then finally, we are exploring innovative teaching methods such as online learning and others to really enhance the learning experience and access to the certificate. So in terms of the curriculum, there's 3 different parts. So there's a required core, which is 3 classes that every student pursuing the certificate must take. Then there's 2 electives, which there's a broad list of classes to select from. And lastly, there's an action learning component. So for the required core, so there's 3 classes. The first one, you have a choice between 3 different classes: Analytics Edge, Analytics of Operations Management, or Machine Learning. And then you have an Analytics Pro Seminar, which is a class based on guest speakers that really gets you exposed to analytics in the real world, in the enterprise. And then communicating with data, which helps you better communicate your insights and models. For the electives, you can choose 2 electives from a different group. So for instance, from marketing, economics, finance, operations management, or operations research, systems dynamic, and behavioral and policy sciences. And then lastly, we have an action learning component. And unlike the other certificates where there's just one action learning class available to complete this requirement, here you have a variety of options. Obviously, Analytics Lab, all the projects here have been curated in order to be to fulfill the requirements of the certificate. But analytics is used throughout other industries and fields, and hence there's other labs where a subset of the projects are eligible to complete the certificate. So for instance, in Operations Lab, there's quite a few projects which have an analytics focus. Other labs such as Go Lab, Idea Lab, Healthcare Lab, or really any other lab, as long as the project itself has an analytics component, can be used to qualify for the action learning component of the certificate. And I'll go into more details in a few slides about what is an eligible project. So for your 2 electives, you have a variety of options, and we've also made it easier for you, whereby if you complete another class for the course. So for instance, if I go back and if you complete Analytics Edge, Analytics of Operations Management, for instance, you can use one of those 2 as an elective. So that would help you towards completing one of the 2 electives. You can also use an independent study or a thesis as an elective, as long as it has an analytics component. And then you're not restricted to that list of electives, but you can also submit petition for approval of another elective, whether at Sloan or elsewhere in the institute or beyond, such as in Media Lab, Course 6, or even Harvard. And we'll, if you submit the petition with the syllabus of the class, we'll review it and make sure that it qualifies for our standards, and then you will get approved. So for the action learning components, I've gotten a lot of questions last year from students trying to understand what is a project or what is an analysis that would qualify for the certificates. So here are the guidelines that we provide. So in order to qualify, a project must involve a significant amount of data, and not just descriptive analytics, but also predictive and or prescriptive analytics. So basically, within your project, you need to complete a model that is predictive or prescriptive. So it can be, it can be a regression model or a classification model or an optimization model, for instance, within the project. And so at the end of your project, we ask that you submit a short document via a form. And the document should describe basically what you did for the analytics component of the project. So what is the problem that you're solving? What is the data that you're using? What is the model that you're using, and how does it stack up? What is its performance? And I'm obviously available throughout the semester to provide guidance and answer questions from teams who are uncertain whether their project qualifies or what the analysis should involve. So what's the admissions process for the certificate? So we don't have any formal admission process. That is, you don't need to submit a resume or an interest letter to be admitted into the certificate. You can just submit a form with your interest, and then you're in. So it's open to all MIT graduate level programs. We've also increased the flexibility by allowing you to pursue another certificate or track. So if you're interested in the healthcare or sustainability certificate, or one of the tracks, such as enterprise management, finance, or entrepreneurship, you are not prevented from pursuing those if you pursue the analytics certificate. And to allow you to do that, we've actually allowed 2 shared courses when pursuing another track or certificate. So for instance, if you pursue the healthcare certificate, you have to take healthcare lab as part of the certificate, and hence, if your healthcare lab project involves analytics components, you can also use that class for the analytics certificate. So that would be an example of shared courses. So you just need to register online by filling out a form so that we're aware that you're pursuing the certificates. We can share with you news, events, and opportunities as they become available. And we can also work with Sloan Educational Services to track your progress and completion, and make sure that at the end of your time here at Sloan, you obtain your certificate and you can attend our award ceremony. So on top of the sort of academics of the certificate, we have a lot of events going on throughout the year. So for instance, we have a guest speaker series where we bring in speakers from a variety of companies to talk about analytics at their companies. So last year, for instance, we had ESPN, IBM Watson, the Air Force, McKinsey, BCG Gamma, amongst others. We also have a unique event on campus, which is our analytics career networking night. So this is an evening at the Media Lab where over 50 companies from a variety of sizes and industries come to meet with students to showcase their analytics excellence and recruit future talent. So you are able to mingle with other students and company representatives and learn about job opportunities at those companies. And it's held each year during the first week of February, so next year would be the February 5th. And then our certificate being new, we're still developing our programming, so we may have more events throughout the year. And finally, I wanted to point out to you additional analytics resources at Sloan or MIT. So first of all, I mentioned the Analytics Club, the Data Analytics Club, which itself has events and workshops throughout the year. Obviously, all the information that I told you today is also available on our website, which you can access at this URL, which appears on your screen. I've also got a lot of questions from students who don't have a lot or any exposure, prior exposure to programming languages, and who want to get up to speed before classes start, as a lot of our analytics classes involve some programming, whether in R or Julia. So I wanted to point out to you a few potential MOOCs that we've reviewed that would be helpful to get up to speed. So on edX, there's a few options. There's an introduction to R for data science, or programming in R for data science. Both of those classes are good overviews or good starter classes to get started in R. Coursera has a whole data science certification, and the first few classes within that certification are the introduction to R, so it would be also worthwhile classes to take as an alternative to the edX classes. And then there's also a Julia for scientific programming. Julia is an optimization language that we use in some classes here as well. Sloan also has computing resources. So for instance, if your work or projects involve large data sources or complex algorithms that aren't feasible on your laptops due to CPU and memory, you can use some computing clusters available here at Sloan. And then MIT libraries also have data resources. So they have a lot of publicly or privately available data sources that are curated that you can leverage for your projects. Well, thank you very much. So we are at the end of the presentation. So now we have some time left for any questions that you have.
Thank you, Corinne. Now we'll start the Q&A. If you have not already done so, please include any questions you might have in the Q&A function. We will answer these in the order received. So one of the questions that has come in asks, what are examples of Media Lab classes that would count towards the certificate's electives?
Okay, so Media Lab classes. So I think there's a Media Ventures class, which could qualify as an elective in marketing. They also have classes. There's a Data Studio class, which is kind of a hands-on class on how to use data in media to really display data in a variety of fashion. That would be also a potential class to take.
Another question asks, what portion of classes / electives / core involves coding in R or Python?
Yeah, I don't have a hard number for that. I think, one of our beliefs here at Sloan is that, in order to understand analytics, you really need to get hands-on with the data. So I would say, a large share of our classes involve some level of coding. Usually we, a lot of times, especially for introductory classes, we provide you with the algorithm, and you just need to tweak it, so you don't need to write anything from scratch. You can kind of use the baseline code that is provided to you and tweak it to your purposes and needs. So the level of programming involved is for introductory classes is not very high. You should be able to do it, and we have had examples last year of students who completed the certificate with zero prior knowledge or experience in analytics or programming.
Another participant is asking, can we only use R in the technical classes, or can we choose to learn and use Python instead?
Mm-hmm. So for most of the classes, such as Analytics Edge or Analytics of Operations Management, the language of use is R. There are other classes, such as whether it's for your lab project, for instance, where you could use any programming language that you choose. So that could be Python. Some students have even used Excel and VBA in some cases, especially for optimization problems.
This next question asks, do you think data science programming is an important skill for business analytics related roles?
So programming per se, so knowing R or Python, I think even if you're in a role that it is not hands-on, that is just, say, a management role, and having a decent understanding of the work that the people underneath you are doing definitely helps. It provides credibility. It helps you better manage these people, provide better guidance, make also sure that you can quality control their work and ask the right questions. So I do believe that some level of understanding of programming is important.
This person asks, do we need to register before we start school at Sloan, or would we be able to register for the certificate during our first semester?
No, you can register at any time. I think it helps us to know, as early as possible how many students are interested in the certificate in order to better forecast demand for certain classes, and obviously make sure that you're on our mailing list and are aware of events and information that we provide through this mailing list. But you can opt in and out at any point in time during your tenure at MIT.
Excuse me, Corinne, this is Dawn. Can I add to to your statement and just ask a follow-on question that may come up is, so you had mentioned some of the core in your slide, but that's not the core that we're talking about.
Oh, right. Yes.
During the fall semester. These certificates don't start until the spring semester for the MBA students. And so how can they prepare if they're really interested in this certificate during the fall? Is there a core elective that you might recommend they register for?
I'm not sure.
Well, Intro to Operations.
Introduction to Operations would be a great class.
15, 7, 6, 1.
Yeah. Yeah. DMD will provide a good refresher on or introduction to techniques such as regression, optimization, statistics, etc. Without the hands-on programming part. So, or more like the theoretical concept, that would be a good introduction.
Thank you.
What is the last day for enrolling for the certificate?
There's no last day. You could let us on your last day of Sloan. Let us know on your last day of Sloan if you so wish. SCS will tell us anyways who has completed all of the classes towards the certificate.
I think we talked a little bit about this already, but this person says, you mentioned R and Julia. What about Python?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we touched on it before as well. I think a lot of the classes at Sloan here use R rather than Python. So whether it's analytics of operations management, analytics edge, for instance, Python. If you know already Python, you could use it in your own projects or lab classes, for instance. So if you take analytics edge, for instance, you could use Python if you wish.
I think we might have just touched on this before, but this person asks, when do Sloan students typically start and complete their certificate? I want to take my first semester to get familiar with R and Julia, but will that make it difficult for me to complete the 6 courses? I assume that the timing of when courses are offered affects this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can probably share later on. I have a PDF with some sample pathways, but as Dawn mentioned, the certificate really only starts in your spring semester, as you will be busy during the fall taking core classes. So you shouldn't worry about missing out on anything during the fall.
This person asks, what are some career examples that Sloan students who are interested in analytics went on to pursue?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I mean, it's actually still a little bit early for us to tell, because the certificate was only launched last year. So I don't know that we have the full employment reports yet. where students went. I have a few sort of examples that come to mind of, there's, I know of students who went to, to Amazon in a sort of product management or Google or even IBM. And so, so product management roles, for instance, in those analytics, or data companies, tech companies, has been a role that I've seen students take on. Yeah, but definitely depending on the level of prior experience before Sloan and the interest, we can have people only marginally use the certificate versus really be sort of immersed in a role that fully utilizes those skills.
Demetra asks, does MIT provide access to some special analytical software like Alteryx or Tableau?
I don't think we have any licenses for those products. No, not that I'm aware of. I think they are always free trials and such for those products available. But I think we try and stay away from for-profit products. So obviously, the price tag is an issue, and as far as those particular products, Tableau, etc., they are very much sort of drag and drop. So you kind of miss out on the what you learned from a programming language, which is really understanding what's going on behind the scene.
Hirsch asks, if we register for the certificate, take a few classes, and decide not to complete the certificate, is that okay? Additionally, are any of the classes you discussed open to only students in the certificate?
Right. So as far as the first part of your question, that's completely okay. Whether your interest changes or you decide to pursue other tracks or certificate, or or for any reason, you can drop in and out of the certificate at any point in time. And then there's no class open only to certificate students. That's kind of a policy at Sloan, that there's no restrictions for certificates.
I can take this next question as they ask, will you share the slides with us? Yes, this webinar is currently being recorded, and within 24 hours of completion, it will be posted to the admin event site where you had gone to register for this webinar. That way that you can view it at any time after this if you're looking for more information. This person asks, does MIT have coupon codes for some online learning platforms?
No, we don't. I mean, a lot of these are free or a very low price tag, which is one of the great advantages of the MOOCs.
Another question says, what % of students complete a certificate, either analytics or the other ones?
Hi, it's Maura. Certificates, the business analytics certificate was new this year. I believe we had 18 or 20 MBAs complete. Overall, you had over 75 people complete the certificate from across the Sloan graduate population. We expect that number will increase this year.
And the other ones, do you have any?
The healthcare certificate is much more specialized. I believe they had 7 MBAs graduate from that year. Last year with 15 overall, and sustainability had 60 with probably 25 to 30 MBAs.
At this time, there's no other questions, but I'd like to leave it open just for another couple minutes. If you guys come up with anything, if you think of anything you want to ask, we'll hold out here for a few more minutes for you. Another question has come in, a small off-topic question. When does track registration open and where?
Hi, this is Sheila. Track registration will open today, and the link will be in the checklist in the admit site. If you go into the checklist, look into July, and there will be a link to tracks.
Give it another minute or so. We had another question come in. Are there many broader MIT, not Sloan, analytics related classes?
I think so. Electrical engineering, computer science has a lot of analytics related classes. Obviously a lot of machine learning, deep learning classes happen there as well. So that's another area of Sloan to look into for, I would say, usually more in-depth classes, as you can imagine from, students there are graduating with majors or masters or PhDs in electrical engineering and computer science. So those are usually not introductory classes.
Well, thank you, Corinne. We hope this information on the Business Analytics Certificate was very helpful for you. Once again, if you have further questions, you can either reach out to the MBA Program Office, or as you can see on the screen, you can reach out to the Business Analytics Certificate email address. Thank you for joining the MBA webinar, and we look forward to seeing you in August.